They believed they had sold me a worthless scrap of land for $2,900. Just a dry strip of dirt tucked behind a tennis court with an unattractive concrete utility box sitting on top of it. What they didn't realize was that the moment I opened that box, I was staring directly at the lifeline of an entire neighborhood. And the second I understood that, the balance of power between me and 120 wealthy homeowners flipped overnight. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm an electrician from a small town outside Fort Collins, Colorado. My life isn't glamorous. Gravel driveway, an old Ford pickup with a cracked dashboard, a coffee maker that's been running every morning since around 2009. Most mornings I'm up before sunrise, boots waiting on the porch, tool bag slung over my shoulder, heading out to solve somebody else's electrical problem. Electricians spend their days noticing things most people overlook: breaker panels, service lines, junction boxes. After enough years in the trade, you start seeing patterns. You learn that every big, shiny system usually depends on some small, forgotten piece of hardware hidden somewhere out of sight. That habit of paying attention is the only reason this story happened. About 12 miles east of where I live is a place called Willow Creek Estates. It's one of those carefully planned neighborhoods with identical roofs, perfectly trimmed lawns, and HOA rule books thick enough to stop a bullet. The townhomes start around $800,000. Granite countertops, smart thermostats, Tesla chargers in the garage. At night, the community pool glows blue like something out of a resort brochure, and the streetlights are so bright and clean you'd swear the neighborhood had just been built yesterday. In reality, most of it went up around 2006 or 2007. That detail matters later. The first time I heard about the property was through a man named Leonard Grayson. Leonard used to work as a real estate attorney in Denver. Silver hair, always wearing press shirts, and the kind of voice that sounds like it belongs in a courtroom microphone, even when he's just ordering lunch. I had met him a couple years earlier while doing electrical work at the Willow Creek Clubhouse. Back then, Leonard sat on the HOA board. He was a guy who ran meetings, signed checks, and made sure all the community rules were followed. To be honest, he always talked to me the way people talk to furniture. Not openly rude, just that polite tone people use when they assume you're not operating on their level. One afternoon, he called me. "Daniel," he said in that smooth, confident voice, "I might have a small opportunity you'd be interested in." Opportunity turned out to be a strange word for what he was about to show me. He asked if I could drive over to Willow Creek that evening. Apparently, the HOA wanted to sell a tiny parcel of land behind the tennis courts. According to him, it had almost no value, just a leftover utility strip the developers had never used. 20 by 30 feet. That's smaller than some living rooms. I figured maybe they just needed someone local to hold the land for paperwork reasons. HOAs sometimes sell odd slivers of property like that just to clean up records. So after work, I drove over. The sun was starting to dip when I pulled into Willow Creek Estates. Perfect sidewalks, identical mailboxes, expensive SUVs parked neatly like they were lined up for a real estate advertisement. Then I drove behind the tennis courts. And there it was, a sad little rectangle of dry dirt and cracked clay, maybe 600 square feet total. Sitting right in the middle was a beige concrete utility box, roughly the size of a refrigerator, quietly humming to itself like it had a heartbeat. I walked around it once, then twice. After years of working with electrical equipment, you learn to recognize certain sounds. Transformers hum in a very specific way. Leonard walked up beside me holding a laminated folder. Well, he chuckled lightly. Not exactly prime real estate, huh? He handed me a stack of documents clipped together. Purchase agreement, parcel map, HOA approval forms already signed. Everything looked extremely neat, almost too neat. "This land is basically scrap," he said. "We're just trying to clear it off the books." Price, $2,900. I slowly flipped through the paperwork. Then I noticed another document tucked behind the purchase agreement. Utility easement. That meant even if I bought the land, the HOA would still keep legal rights to whatever equipment sat on it. Leonard noticed me reading it and gave a relaxed smile. "Most people don't worry about that part," he said casually. "Just standard boilerplate. Now here's something I've learned in life. Whenever someone says most people don't read something, that's exactly when you start reading very carefully. So I kept scanning. And the more I read, the stranger it felt. The easement looked rushed, almost like someone had tried to patch a mistake in the paperwork after the fact. I looked back at the concrete box. The hum coming from inside, it wasn't small. It had that steady electrical vibration that suggested something bigger. I handed the papers back. "I'm not signing the easement," I said. Leonard blinked. The polite smile stayed on his face, but his eyes tightened slightly. "Well," he said slowly, "that's sort of part of the deal. I'll still buy the land," I told him, "just not the easement." For the first time since I'd known him, Leonard hesitated. Just a moment. Then he laughed it off. "Daniel," he said, "that box barely does anything. It's just leftover infrastructure from when the neighborhood was built. Then it shouldn't matter who owns the land," I replied. We stood there quietly for a moment. The tennis courts were empty. Wind pushed dry grass across the dirt. Finally, he shrugged. "If that's how you want to do it." 3 days later, the deed was filed. $2,900 cash. That small patch of land behind the tennis courts officially became mine. The next morning, I brought my tool bag and a flashlight, because electricians live by one simple rule. If something is humming, you open the box and find out why. And the moment I lifted that heavy concrete lid, I realized Willow Creek Estates had just made the biggest mistake of their lives.